You don't deserve anything. They mocked the obese girl. But the mountain man won't let it slide. The Montana Territory's sun beat down mercilessly on the small town of Bitterroot Creek in August 1888. 21-year-old Clara Whitmore stood in the town square, her substantial frame trembling as she faced a crowd of at least 50 townspeople who'd gathered for what they called justice. But this wasn't justice. This was cruelty masquerading as righteousness. You don't deserve anything. Mayor Thornton's voice boomed across the square, his finger pointed accusingly at Clara. You've been stealing from hard-working families, taking food that doesn't belong to you, living off the charity of people who've shown you nothing but kindness. I didn't steal, Clara tried to protest, but her voice was drowned out by the crowd's angry murmurs. We found the evidence. Mrs. Patterson, the baker's wife, stepped forward, holding up a half-eaten loaf of bread. This was in her room. Stolen from my shop yesterday! I paid for that bread! Clara's voice cracked with desperation. I gave you 20 cents. 20 cents for a 30-cent loaf. You tried to cheat me, and when I called you out, you grabbed it and ran. It was a lie. Clara had paid exactly what Mrs. Patterson had asked. But the baker's wife had changed her story, and now Clara stood accused of theft in front of the entire town. This wasn't the first time. In the 8 months since Clara had arrived in Bitterroot Creek, she'd been accused of theft 3 times, fired from 4 jobs, and evicted from 2 boarding houses, all because of her size. Look at her, someone shouted from the crowd. She's fat as a prize hog. Of course she's stealing food. Probably eats everything she can get her hands on. Disgusting creature. The insults rained down like blows. Clara's face burned with shame, tears streaming down her cheeks, but she forced herself to stand straight. She'd learned long ago that showing weakness only made the mockery worse. Mayor Thornton raised his hands for silence. The law is clear. If Clara Whitmore cannot pay the 30 cents she owes Mrs. Patterson, plus damages for the distress caused, she must leave Bitterroot Creek immediately. We cannot harbor thieves and freeloaders. I'll pay. Clara fumbled in her pocket, pulling out her small coin purse. She counted desperately. 15 cents. Not enough. She'd spent the rest on her room rent that morning. I don't have 30 cents right now, but I can work it off. Please, I'll do anything. We've given you chances. Mrs. Henderson, who ran the laundry where Clara had briefly worked, stepped forward. I hired you for 2 weeks. You ate more than you earned. I had to let you go because you were costing me money. Another lie. Clara had eaten her single daily meal provided as part of her wages, nothing more. But Mrs. Henderson had fired her anyway, claiming Clara was too slow and bad for business. You don't deserve anything. The shout came from multiple voices now, becoming a chant. You don't deserve food. You don't deserve work. You don't deserve to live here. The crowd was pressing closer now, their faces twisted with contempt. Clara backed against the platform, her heart racing with genuine fear. This felt different from previous incidents. This felt dangerous. Get out of town. Leave and never come back. Nobody wants you here, you fat cow. Mayor Thornton raised his voice over the crowd. Clara Whitmore, you have until sundown to leave Bitterroot Creek. If you're still here after dark, you'll be arrested for vagrancy and theft. Take whatever belongings you have and go. You are no longer welcome in this community. But where am I supposed to go? Clara's voice broke completely now. I have no money, no family, nowhere. That's not our problem, Mrs. Patterson's voice was shrill with righteous anger. You should have thought about that before you stole from decent people. I didn't steal, Clara finally shouted, her frustration and fear boiling over. I paid for that bread. You're lying. You're all lying because you hate me, because I'm fat, because I don't fit your idea of what a woman should look like. The crowd went silent for a moment, shocked by her outburst. Then the mockery resumed, louder and crueler than before. Oh, playing the victim now. Poor little fat girl. Everyone's so mean to her. Maybe if you weren't such a pig, people would treat you better. You don't deserve sympathy. You don't deserve anything. Clara felt her knees weakening. 8 months of this. 8 months of trying to survive in a town that had decided she was worthless. 8 months of lies, mockery, and cruelty that was slowly breaking her spirit. Before Bitterroot Creek, there had been 3 other towns, each one the same story. Arrive desperate and hopeful, get rejected by everyone, endure mockery and false accusations, get driven out, find the next town, repeat. For 5 years, since her parents died when she was 16, this had been Clara's existence. A nightmare she couldn't wake from, a hell she couldn't escape. And now, once again, she was being told to leave, to go out into the wilderness with no money, no supplies, no destination. Last time, she'd nearly died of exposure before stumbling into Bitterroot Creek. This time, she might not be so lucky. I don't know where to go, Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. Please, I'll leave town, but can someone, anyone, at least tell me which direction has the nearest settlement? Why should we help you? Mayor Thornton's voice was cold. You've brought nothing but trouble to our town. Figure it out yourself. Clara looked around at the faces surrounding her. People she'd tried to befriend, employers she'd worked hard for, neighbors she'd greeted politely every day. All of them looked at her with contempt, disgust, or indifference. No one was going to help her. No one cared if she lived or died. She was about to turn and leave, to accept her fate and hope she survived long enough to find another settlement, when a voice cut through the crowd like thunder. I've heard enough. Every head turned toward the source of the voice. A man stood at the edge of the crowd, and Clara's breath caught at the sight of him. He was enormous, at least 6'6", with shoulders that seemed to block out the sun. His buckskin clothing was worn but well maintained. His dark hair hung past his shoulders, tied with leather cord, and his face was heavily bearded. But it was his eyes, pale green like glacier ice, that commanded attention. They held a coldness that made even Mayor Thornton take a step back. Who are you? Thornton demanded, trying to maintain his authority. Name's Ezra Stone. I trap in the Bitterroot Mountains about 60 miles north of here. His voice was deep, rough from years in the wilderness. Been listening to this spectacle for the past 20 minutes, and I'm done listening. He walked forward, and the crowd parted before him like water before a ship's prow. His boots struck the ground with authority, and Clara noticed he carried himself like a soldier. Back straight, movements precise, alert to everything around him. What I just witnessed, Ezra continued, his pale green eyes sweeping over the assembled townspeople, is the most cowardly, unjust display I've seen in 20 years on the frontier. And I've seen a lot of ugly things. Now see here, Mayor Thornton started to bluster. No, you see here. Ezra's voice didn't rise, but it cut through the mayor's protest like a knife. You accuse this woman of theft based on the word of one shopkeeper who changed her story. You didn't investigate. You didn't ask for witnesses. You didn't give her a fair hearing. You just accepted the accusation because it was convenient to your prejudices. He turned to Mrs. Patterson. You said she paid 20 cents for a 30-cent loaf. But I was in your shop yesterday. I heard you tell her the price was 20 cents because the bread was getting stale. She paid exactly what you asked. Then you decided to change your story today. Why? Because she's fat and you thought you could get away with it? Mrs. Patterson's face went white, then red. I don't recall saying 20 cents. Don't lie. I was there. I heard you. Ezra's voice was absolutely merciless. You're bearing false witness against someone you've decided is an acceptable target. That's not just cruel. It's evil. He looked at Mayor Thornton. And you're supposed to uphold justice in this town. Instead, you're conducting a witch hunt based on prejudice and lies. Where's the evidence? Where are the witnesses? Where's the fair trial? The evidence is right there. Thornton pointed at the bread Mrs. Patterson still held. Stolen property. Property she paid for, Ezra corrected. I can testify to that under oath. Can you? Or are you just accepting the word of a liar because it lets you drive out someone you find unpleasant to look at? The crowd was silent now, uncertainty replacing their earlier righteousness. Several people were looking uncomfortable, realizing they'd participated in something unjust. Ezra turned to the crowd. "Let me tell you all something. I've spent 20 years in these mountains. I've survived blizzards, bear attacks, starvation, and more hardships than most of you can imagine. You know what I learned? The only thing that matters is character. Not appearance, not size, not whether someone fits your narrow idea of acceptable." He gestured to Clara. "This woman has been trying to survive in a town that's done everything possible to destroy her. She's worked when you'd hire her. She's paid for what she could afford. She's endured mockery and cruelty without becoming cruel herself. That's character. That's strength." His pale green eyes hardened. "But you people, you've lied, falsely accused, denied her work based on prejudice, and now you're driving her into the wilderness with no supplies, no direction, no help. You know what that makes you? Cowards and bullies who found someone vulnerable and decided to destroy her for entertainment." "We're not," someone started to protest. "Yes, you are. Every single one of you standing here participating in this mockery is a coward. You say she doesn't deserve anything. She doesn't deserve food, shelter, fairness, or basic human dignity. Let me tell you what you don't deserve. Her forgiveness. Her continued presence in a town that treats her like this. Her efforts to be kind and respectful to people who've shown her nothing but contempt." He turned back to Clara, and his expression softened completely. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "See, Clara," she managed to whisper. "Clara Whitmore." "Clara Whitmore, nice to meet you, even under these terrible circumstances." He pulled out a leather pouch from his belt. "Mrs. Patterson, how much does Clara supposedly owe you?" 30 cents, Mrs. Patterson said sullenly. Ezra pulled out a gold dollar and flipped it to her. "There. Debt paid with interest. Clara owes you nothing now. Clear?" Mrs. Patterson caught the coin, her eyes widening at the generous overpayment. Ezra turned to Mayor Thornton. "And you. You declared Clara had to leave town by sundown or face arrest. I'm making you a counteroffer. Clara's coming with me. She's going to work at my mountain station as my housekeeper and assistant. I'll pay her fair wages, provide shelter, and treat her with the respect she deserves, something this town has failed to do." He looked at Clara. "If that's acceptable to you, I'm not forcing anything, but I'm offering honest employment in a place where you'll be valued for your work, not mocked for your appearance." Clara stared at him, unable to process what was happening. This stranger, this mountain man, had just defended her, paid her supposed debt, and offered her employment when everyone else had rejected her. Why? What did he want? What was the catch? "Why would you help me?" Her voice came out small, defeated. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because I'm tired of watching people treat vulnerable folk like they're less than human." His pale green eyes held hers. "I'm not offering charity, Clara. I'm offering fair employment. You'll work hard. Mountain living is brutal, but you'll be paid honestly and treated with respect. That's the deal." Clara looked around at the crowd, at Mayor Thornton's angry face, at Mrs. Patterson's guilty expression, at the townspeople who'd just been chanting that she didn't deserve anything. Then she looked back at Ezra Stone, this stranger who'd stood up for her when no one else would. "I accept," she said. "I'll work for you." Ezra nodded once, satisfied. "Good. Go collect whatever belongings you have. We leave in 1 hour." As Clara hurried toward her boarding house, she heard Ezra address the crowd one final time. "All of you should remember this day. Remember how you treated someone vulnerable. Remember how you participated in cruelty and called it justice. And remember that when you needed character, you showed cowardice. Maybe next time someone needs help, you'll do better. Though I doubt it." The crowd dispersed in uncomfortable silence, their earlier righteousness completely deflated. Clara had almost nothing to pack, one spare dress, her mother's Bible, and a small tin containing 3 cents. Everything she owned fit into a cloth sack that Ezra tied to his pack horse with casual efficiency. Before leaving Bitterroot Creek, Ezra took Clara to the general store. Despite her protests, he spent $30 outfitting her with proper traveling clothes, a warm coat, sturdy boots, and basic necessities. "You can't go into the mountains dressed like that," he said matter-of-factly. "Consider it an advance on your wages. You'll pay me back through your work if you want, but you need proper clothing to survive." The 3-day journey to Ezra's mountain station revealed much about both of them. Ezra proved to be an excellent teacher, showing Clara how to read landmarks, identify edible plants, recognize animal tracks, and predict weather patterns. He was patient when she struggled, encouraging when she succeeded, and never once commented on her size, except in practical contexts like weight distribution on the horse. "You're quick to learn," he observed on the second day. "That's valuable. Intelligence and willingness to work matter more than anything else in the mountains." "You really believe that?" Clara asked, still skeptical of his kindness. "I know it. I've spent 20 years up here. The mountains don't care what you look like. They only care if you're strong enough, smart enough, and determined enough to survive them." He glanced at her. "You survived 5 years of traveling between hostile towns with no help and no resources. That takes tremendous strength, physical, mental, and emotional. That's what I need in an assistant, not someone who fits society's narrow beauty standards." On the third evening, as they made camp, Clara finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind. "Why did you really help me? In the town square?" Ezra was quiet for a long moment, staring into the campfire. "Because I had a daughter once. She'd be about your age now if she'd lived. She was built like you, substantial, strong. But the town where we lived mocked her constantly, called her names, excluded her from everything, treated her like she was worthless." His voice roughened with old pain. "When she was 16, she ended herself, left a note saying she couldn't endure another day of being called ugly and worthless. I found her in our barn." Clara felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. My wife died 6 months later, couldn't bear the grief. That's when I came to the mountains. Couldn't stand being around people anymore. All their cruelty, their judgment, their narrow-mindedness." He looked at Clara directly. "When I saw you in that town square, being told you didn't deserve anything while a crowd mocked you, I saw my daughter. Saw another good person being destroyed by cruelty. And I couldn't let it happen again. So you're trying to save your daughter by saving me." "No, I can't save Sarah. She's gone. But maybe I can prevent another young woman from believing the lies cruel people tell." His pale green eyes were intense. "You deserve everything good in this world, Clara. Respect, dignity, fairness, kindness. The fact that Bitterroot Creek and every other town failed to give you those things says everything about them and nothing about you." The cabin, when they finally reached it, surprised Clara. She'd expected a rough shack. Instead, she found a well-built log structure with 2 rooms plus a loft, glass windows, and a covered porch. Behind it stood a workshop, smokehouse, and storage buildings. "Main room is communal. Back room is yours. Real bed, chest for belongings, window, privacy. Loft is mine. We'll share the main room for cooking and working, but you'll have your own space." Fly. Over the following months, Clara discovered that mountain work was indeed brutal. Hauling water from the stream, chopping firewood, learning to preserve meat and cure hides, maintaining equipment, cooking substantial meals. It was relentless and exhausting, but she thrived. Her body grew stronger from constant physical labor. Her confidence increased as she mastered new skills. Most importantly, she began to believe what Ezra kept telling her, that her worth wasn't determined by her size, but by her character, capabilities, and contributions. Ezra treated her with consistent respect. He praised her genuinely when she accomplished difficult tasks. "That preservation technique you developed is brilliant. and taught her patiently when she struggled. When he was gone checking trap lines, she managed everything independently. When he returned, they worked together as equals. 6 months into her employment, winter locked them into the valley. But isolation didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. They developed comfortable routines. Ezra would read aloud from his surprisingly extensive book collection in the evenings. Clara would cook hearty meals and maintain the cabin with meticulous efficiency. One evening by the fire, as snow fell heavily outside, Clara finally spoke a truth that had been building in her heart. "Thank you for everything. For defending me that day, for bringing me here, for treating me like I have worth. You saved my life, Ezra." "You saved yourself," he replied quietly. "I just gave you a place where you could do it safely. The strength, the determination, the refusal to give up. That was always yours. I just made sure you had space to use it. Still, you stood up when no one else would. You told an entire town they were wrong about me. You risked your reputation." "My reputation?" Ezra smiled slightly. "Clara, I'm a mountain man who lives alone in the wilderness. I have no reputation to protect in civilized society. And even if I did, it would be worth losing to do the right thing." He leaned forward, his pale green eyes serious. "What happened to you in Bitterroot Creek and every other town? That was evil dressed up as righteousness. People telling you that you don't deserve basic human dignity because of how you look. That's not justice. That's cruelty. And I'll never let that slide. Not when I have the power to stop it." 2 years after leaving Bitterroot Creek, Ezra and Clara returned to the town for supplies. They rode side by side into the settlement, equal partners in a successful mountain trading operation. The transformation in Clara was remarkable. She sat tall in her saddle, wearing well-made clothing, her face healthy and confident. She was still a large woman. Mountain living hadn't changed her body size, but she carried herself with absolute dignity and quiet strength. Word spread quickly through Bitterroot Creek. By the time they reached the general store, a crowd had gathered, including Mayor Thornton and Mrs. Patterson. "Clara Whitmore?" Thornton's eyes widened. "Is that really you?" "It's Clara Stone now, Mayor." Clara held up her left hand, showing a simple gold band. "Ezra and I married last spring." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Mrs. Patterson's face went red. "You married him?" someone called out. "The mountain savage?" Ezra's expression hardened at the slur, but Clara spoke before he could respond. "I married a man who treated me with respect when all of you treated me with contempt. A man who stood up for me when you were falsely accusing me of theft and driving me out of town. A man who offered me employment when none of you would hire me. Yes, I married him. Proudly." She looked around at the assembled crowd, people who'd participated in her humiliation, who'd chanted that she didn't deserve anything, who'd driven her into the wilderness with no help. 2 years ago, you told me I didn't deserve anything. You said I didn't deserve food, work, shelter, or basic fairness. You accused me of theft based on lies. You drove me out of town while mocking me. Her voice grew stronger, carrying across the silent square. But you were wrong. I deserved, and I still deserve, everything good in this world: respect, dignity, fair treatment, honest employment, love, happiness. I deserve all of it, not because I've earned it through suffering, but because I'm a human being. That's all the reason anyone needs." Mayor Thornton cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mrs. Stone, we may have been hasty in our judgment. If you're willing to return to Bitterroot Creek, I'm sure we could find work for you." "I have work," Clara interrupted. "Meaningful work in a place where I'm valued. Why would I return here?" "Because we're willing to give you a second chance." "A second chance?" Clara's laugh was bitter. "Mayor, I never got a first chance. From the day I arrived in Bitterroot Creek, you all decided I was worthless based on my appearance. You refused to hire me for decent jobs. You accused me of theft with no evidence. You mocked me constantly. That's not failing to give me a chance. That's systematic cruelty." Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, her face pale. "Clara, I want to apologize for lying about the bread price, for accusing you falsely. I was wrong. I let my prejudices make me cruel, and I've regretted it every day since Ezra called me out." "You regret being called out? Or you regret your actions?" Ezra asked pointedly. Mrs. Patterson looked down. "Both. But mostly my actions. I let the fact that Clara didn't look like other women make me treat her as less than human. That was evil. Ezra was right to call it evil." Other apologies followed, hesitant, awkward, but genuine. Mayor Thornton admitted he'd failed in his duty to ensure fair treatment. Mr. Simmons, the general store owner, apologized for refusing to hire Clara. A few townspeople acknowledged they'd participated in mockery and were ashamed. Clara listened to all of it, her expression unreadable. When the apologies finally ended, she spoke. "I forgive you. Not because you've earned forgiveness, you haven't, but because holding on to anger would only hurt me, and I refuse to give you that power over my life anymore. I forgive you so I can move forward without carrying your cruelty with me." She paused, looking around at the faces. "But understand something clearly. Forgiveness doesn't mean trust. You showed me who you really are when you thought there would be no consequences. You mocked a vulnerable woman, falsely accused her, and drove her out of town while telling her she didn't deserve anything. That's who you are when you think no one powerful is watching." Ezra added quietly. "The only reason you're apologizing now is because Clara came back successful and married to someone you're afraid of. If she'd come back alone and still struggling, you'd have continued your cruelty. That's not real change. That's self-preservation." His pale green eyes swept the crowd with cold assessment. "But here's what Clara's too kind to say directly. You don't deserve her forgiveness. You don't deserve her presence in this town. You don't deserve the benefit of her skills, her intelligence, or her character, all the things you rejected because you were too shallow to see past her appearance." He pulled Clara closer to his side, his arm around her shoulders in a gesture both protective and proprietary. "Clara Stone is under my permanent protection. Anyone who disrespects her, mocks her, or treats her as anything less than the remarkable woman she is will answer to me. And I promise you won't enjoy that conversation." The threat hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. No one doubted Ezra's willingness to back up his words with action. As they prepared to leave Bitterroot Creek, a young woman approached, perhaps 18, with a build similar to Clara's and tears in her eyes. "Mrs. Stone, my name's Elizabeth. I just wanted to say thank you for showing me that people like us can have worth, that we don't have to accept how others treat us. You've given me hope." Clara dismounted and pulled Elizabeth into a brief embrace. "You have worth right now, Elizabeth. You've always had it. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. And if this town doesn't see it, leave. Be brave enough to find somewhere that does. You deserve everything good in this world." They rode out of Bitterroot Creek toward their mountain home, leaving behind a town forever changed by one mountain man's refusal to let cruelty slide unchallenged. 3 years after the confrontation in Bitterroot Creek, Ezra and Clara's mountain station had become known throughout the territory. But not for trading, for being a refuge. Word had spread that Ezra Stone didn't tolerate cruelty, and that his wife Clara welcomed anyone who'd been treated unjustly because of their appearance. Their cabin had expanded significantly, with guest quarters for travelers seeking shelter from prejudice and mockery. They'd helped dozens of people over the years, women deemed too fat or too ugly to deserve respect, men scarred by accidents or war, children with disabilities, anyone society had decided was unacceptable. Each person arrived broken, believing the lies they'd been told about their worth. Each person left transformed, having learned what Ezra and Clara taught through example, that worth isn't determined by appearance, but by character, capability, and the courage to keep standing despite cruelty. One evening, as Clara and Ezra sat on their porch watching the sunset, she reflected on how different her life was from 5 years ago. "I was ready to die in that town square," she said quietly. "Not literally, though that might have come eventually, but spiritually, emotionally. I'd believed all the things they'd told me, that I didn't deserve anything, that I was worthless, that my existence was a burden. If you hadn't intervened, you would have found another way to survive," Ezra interrupted gently. "You're one of the strongest people I've ever known, Clara. You survived 5 years of traveling between hostile towns with nothing but determination and hope. That's extraordinary strength." "I didn't feel strong. I felt defeated." "Strength isn't about feeling invincible. It's about standing back up every time you're knocked down. You did that hundreds of times. That's real courage." He took her hand. "I didn't save you that day, Clara. I just stopped the people who were trying to destroy you. You saved yourself through 5 years of refusing to give up." Clara leaned against him, watching their small community below. 3 cabins now, housing people they'd helped, all working together to build lives free from judgment. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Getting involved? Taking on all these people who need help?" "Never. He gestured to the settlement below. "This is what I was supposed to do with my life. Sarah died because I couldn't protect her from cruelty. But now I can protect others. I can make sure that when someone says, 'You don't deserve anything,' there's at least one voice saying, 'That's a lie and I won't let it slide.'" "We've changed lives," Clara observed. "They've changed ours too. Every person we've helped has taught us something about resilience, courage, and the human capacity to survive terrible things and come out stronger." Below them, Elizabeth, the young woman who'd approached Clara in Bitterroot Creek, emerged from one of the cabins. She'd come to the mountain station 6 months ago, fleeing a town that had mocked her mercilessly. Now she was learning skills, building confidence, and planning her future with hope instead of despair. "You don't deserve anything," Clara murmured, remembering those cruel words. "That's what they told me, what they told all of us. But they were wrong. We deserve everything. Respect, dignity, love, happiness, peace. We deserve it all." "And we built it," Ezra added, "not by seeking revenge on those who were cruel, not by becoming bitter, but by creating a place where worth is measured accurately, by character, not appearance. That's the best revenge possible, proving them wrong by living well." As darkness fell and stars emerged overhead, Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here. The mockery, the false accusations, the moment in the town square when she'd believed she had nothing left. And then Ezra Stone had stepped forward and said, "I've heard enough." Those 3 words had changed everything, not just for Clara, but for dozens of others who'd found their way to this mountain sanctuary where cruelty wasn't tolerated and worth was measured truly. The town of Bitterroot Creek had told her she didn't deserve anything, but one mountain man hadn't let that slide. And in refusing to tolerate injustice, he'd helped Clara discover a truth that transformed her life. She deserved everything, always had, and nothing anyone said could change that fundamental truth.